I'm really slightly sort of battered a bit by the discussion of multiculturalism because we've fleshed out quite a lot of frank discussion. I wonder what you think about multiculturalism. People, we're asking the question whether it's affected trust in each other in our society.
I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's very valuable. I love being in a large cosmopolitan city like London or Paris, where you have just dozens, if not hundreds, of different cultures all mixing together and indeed appropriating from each other. But I fear that things have gotten a bit out of hand. I think that we have a certain number of people now living here and the same in other big city capitals in other countries who really have no consideration for the values of the country.
Yes.
At its highest, some of them even hate the place and the values and want to change it. And I think it's alienated a lot of people against them. You know, if you see one person who looks a certain way and they're behaving badly, you're going to naturally at least wonder whether the next people you see who look like that aren't the same. And so I think it has really, unfortunately, most unfortunately, Johnny, raised a tremendous level of mistrust. And the people I'm referring to, some of them are so violent in their protestations and their exclamations that, you know, they've carried a power beyond their number and created a real problem.
Indeed. So we perhaps need to reset a kind of new patriotism, a new kind of nationalism without all the dangers of nationalism that follow from it, to reset the benefits, if you like, of multiculturalism and sort of rein it down slightly. Now, also, Roger, you want to talk about the spectre of borrowing, because what has happened over the last year and a half is that interest rates have risen in a shocking way, manifested a recession across 2 quarters, although apparently things are getting better now. But the spectre that interest rates really aren't going to go down this year at all. The pressure is still to keep them high.
Well, I don't think it really matters whether the tiny numbers that mean we're in recession or not change very much. It doesn't really affect our daily lives. I think, as you say, the big problem is the interest rates, the absolute utter stupidity of Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, the Bailey-osaurus, as I call him, and his thick-skinned colleagues who won't listen to anybody, in raising interest rates 14 times to combat inflation. The stupidity of Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt, who's never worked a day in his life in any financial business. Can you imagine showing up with a bank with a CV that has no financial experience and being given the top job of running a country? Anyway, going along with Bailey, these characters, these lofty politicians, all of them have crushed the economy of this country and its business and its citizens without having the slightest effect on inflation. As I say over and over, and as I predicted at the time of the very first interest rise, I said raising interest rates is not going to stop this non-consumer driven inflation. This is what they call cost push inflation. It's driven by food and energy and material and service prices over which people have no control. Making money more expensive for them is just going to hurt them more. And in fact, the 14 rises actually prolonged and inflamed the inflation to the point where we are now, which is crushed. And Bailey still will not reduce the interest rates, even though inflation has fallen. It's nothing to do with him, but I also predicted a year and a half ago that all of these gentlemen would claim the credit for it. But fine, take the credit, but at least lower the rates and give us some breathing space.
So do you think he'll be listened to? Do you think the pressure on the international markets will force the Bank of England actually to reduce rates by 1/4% or maybe even half?
No,
they won't do anything, right?
No, Bailey-osaurus, they don't listen to anything.
And they don't do it.
Even the Select Committee of the House of Lords criticized the Bank of England a couple of months ago formally for doing a terrible job of forecasting and reporting, doing a miserable job of handling inflation, talked about its groupthink culture of nobody with a different opinion allowed to do anything. And the bank has done not a ruddy thing about it, because Gordon Brown gave them effectively utter independence in 1997.
He did indeed.
And
He's
nobody can pull the Bailey Alcers away from the watering hole for another 5 years.
It's like he's the Chancellor of the Exchequer forever, Gordon Brown, because of that huge change he made. Dr. Roger Gould, thank you very much indeed for joining us.